Morning light pools across the kitchen's worn linoleum while Mara pads in, sock-footed, to start the coffee pot the way Linda taught her. 3 scoops, tap the basket, wait for the grateful gurgle. Across the hall, Linda's sewing machine hums, a steady heartbeat that has measured their days since Mara's own heart began to beat. Neighbors call them inseparable. One grocery cart, one Netflix profile, one well-practiced duet of inside jokes. They leave post-it love notes on the fridge, rotate lavender through the window boxes, and still toast marshmallows over the stove burner when snow flies. Today feels like any other. The cat yawns on the windowsill, the wall clock clucks its wooden tongue. The house exhales the faint vanilla Linda sprays on couch pillows each payday. Yet an unexplained draft snakes through the hallway, tugging the hem of Mara's robe. She checks the deadbolt secure, then the dryer vent clean. Later, when she carries fresh sheets to the spare room, she notices the dresser has inched away from the wall, as if nudged by that same breath. Curious, she kneels, fingers grazing dust bunnies and a forgotten pacifier yellowed by decades. Tucked beneath the frame, something glints. A cheap flip phone sealed with silver duct tape, its face blank, its battery somehow clinging to a single bar of life. The screen wakes under her thumb, revealing one saved message. Linda's humming grows louder, closer. The draft curls around Mara's ankles like a warning. She presses play. A man's voice, hoarse, urgent, fills the hush. "I'm alive, but your mom must never know I called." Footsteps halt outside the door. The sewing machine's motor seizes. In the sudden silence, the phone feels suddenly molten in Mara's grip. The voice crackles again, same 3-second rasp, same impossible heartbeat of hope, before the message loops back to nothing. Mara's lungs forget their rhythm. Blood drains so fast her ears whine like old camera film rewinding. She braces a hand against the dresser. Varnish peels under her fingernails as though the wood itself recoils from the truth. The hallway floorboards creak. Linda's shadow spills through the crack beneath the door, a slow black tide. Mara's thumb hovers, paralyzed between replay and erase, while her mind stitches 30 years of photographs into a grotesque new quilt. Birthday candles blown beside an empty chair, a scholarship ceremony scanned for a face that was never there, bedtime stories about a hero father who would have loved you so. Each memory puckers, seems ripping. Her knees fold. She sinks until the dusty hem of the lace tablecloth brushes her cheek like a condolence. The phone, still warm, ticks against the floorboard, an unseen metronome counting off every second of the life she thought she knew. Outside the room, Linda's breathing is audible now, shallow, wet, as though she's drowning in the hallway's stale air. A soft thud, probably the laundry basket sliding from her grip. Mara's pulse hammers against her collarbone, drumming one word, alive, alive, until it no longer sounds like language, just a blunt percussive threat. She imagines the voicemail's area code lighting up a map inside her skull, a pin dropped on a coastline she's never visited, a dock where gulls scream over lost men. Her vision tunnels, the dresser looms like a courthouse facade. She forces herself upright, palms slick with dust and sweat, and pockets the phone with the reverence of slipping a grenade beneath her shirt. One step toward the door, two, each footfall muffled by the carpet of dread. The knob turns before she reaches it. Linda stands framed, mouth slack, eyes already fixed on the rectangular bulge in Mara's jeans. Color drains from her mother's face the way sea withdraws before a tsunami, exposing every stranded deceit. A single second stretches, elastic ready to snap. Mara's throat burns with questions that feel like swallowed glass, but no sound escapes. She simply stares, watching Linda's composure crumple in microscopic twitches, eyelid, jaw, wrist, an implosion witnessed in slow-motion close-up. Then from the pocket, the phone vibrates once unseen caller, same coast code. The floor seems to tilt. Linda's gaze drops to the buzzing fabric, terror blooming like ink in water. Neither woman breathes. Mara's thumb hovers, nail cracked and trembling above the cracked screen. One tap and the oceanic hush of the bedroom detonates into the recorded tide of a man breathing. Slow, Saul-trusted, alive. The voicemail is only 8 seconds, yet it stretches the corridor of 30 empty years until the floorboards groan under the weight of every skipped bedtime story, every unasked question, every birthday candle blown out alone. She feels her pulse ricochet inside the granddaughter quilt. She still keeps on her shoulders like child armor, the fabric suddenly too thin to stop the chill of revelation. Across from her, Linda sees the past climb out of the tiny speaker and wrap itself around her daughter's ankles. The older woman's knees fold the way curtains drop at final bow. No applause, only the soft thud of guilt meeting hardwood. She doesn't reach for the phone again. She knows the next playback would only echo her own heartbeat, the one she has muted for 3 decades with wine, with overtime, with lullabies hummed too hard. Instead, she presses her palms to the rug as if the floral patterns could suction the sound waves back underground, back to the fictitious grave she once dug with perjured tears. Mara, meanwhile, feels her memory reorder itself like dominoes. The unexplained lock on the hallway drawer, the way Linda flinched whenever coast towns appeared on weather forecasts, the yearly forgetting to renew a passport Mara never had. Every mundane scene tilts, revealing the trapdoor beneath. Her throat tastes of iron. She realizes she has bitten the inside of her cheek hard enough to watermark the moment forever. She steadies the phone between both hands, the plastic still warm from Linda's panicked snatch, and photographs the number on the dusty dresser mirror with the flash off, afraid that even that artificial brightness might scare the truth back into hiding. Outside, dusk drapes the neighborhood in forgiving lavender, but inside the grandmother room the color feels accusatory. Mara's eyes drift to the cracked window, where wind chimes tinkle like distant handcuffs. She imagines the map she will trace tonight, the midnight bus, the fishing docks at dawn, the scarred man who answers to a name she has never been allowed to speak. Linda lifts her head, lips parted, sensing the departure already ferrying her daughter across the dark water of choice. The phone vibrates again. Same code, same breath, same wound reopened, and neither woman dares exhale first. The burner rests in Mara's palm like a coal that refuses to cool. Third vibration since dusk, same clipped ring that tiptoes between heartbeats. She thumbs the cracked screen inside her hoodie pocket, so Linda cannot see the glow climb her throat. Upstairs, the hallway smells of the lavender sachets Grandma hoarded in every drawer. Now the scent feels like a curtain lowered over something sharp. Mara slips into the bathroom, locks the latch with the deliberateness of a surgeon closing a chest. 11 unheard messages, all from the same coastal prefix, all less than 12 seconds, as though breath itself were contraband. The newest ends in a rasp she recognizes: salt, fear, and a cadence that once read bedtime boat stories. She presses knuckles to her teeth to stop the sound that wants out. Downstairs, Linda rearranges the sofa cushions for the 3rd time, chasing invisible crumbs, chasing time. Her palms reek of bleach and bargain gin. The kitchen timer dings a reminder that casseroles won't cook the past. She knows Mara is up there, decoding her life sentence. 30 years ago, she signed the pact with trembling courthouse fingers. Tonight, her signature unspools in binary, unstoppable. She counts the cash taped under the cookie jar. 5s, 10s, the emergency roll she hoped hurricane or cancer would claim first. Every bill feels wet with fingerprints that aren't hers. She hears the floorboards above cry out and almost calls up, almost confesses the rest. The deal, the scar, the nightly dream where she drowns him again and wakes thirsty. Mara replays the final second, until the speaker fuzzes. The waveform on the screen looks like a heartbeat flatlining, then lunging back. She screenshots, zooms, discovers background gull cries she missed before. Geography and birds. She opens the bus schedule she downloaded at 3 a.m. The 4:45 express to Heron Cove lists one seat left. She pictures the fisherman's eyes, one brown, one filmed with cataract sea glass, recognizing her before she speaks, the way deer know storms hours ahead. Her thumb hovers over the ticket icon. One tap purchases Exodus, one tap purchases evidence. In the mirror, her face resembles neither parent yet carries both crimes. Linda's rigid chin, Dad's storm-bitten brows. She hears the front door creak, footsteps pause beneath the threshold, a mother's ear pressed to wood, listening for the choice that will ruin or resurrect them. Mara does not breathe. The burner ticket loads before the house exhales. A single seat remains on the dawn bus, back row, window, salt-streaked town at the end of the line. Mara's thumb trembles, then taps. Purchase confirmed. Evidence acquired. The phone glows like a coal in her palm. Inside it, her father's voice waits, patient as a lungful of buried oxygen. She pockets the device, slings the duffel, and slips into the hallway. Linda's bedroom door stands ajar, a sliver of lamplight slicing across the carpet. No snores, no shifting springs, only the metallic click of a clip being eased into place. Mara recognizes the sound from childhood nights, when Linda cleaned the revolver she swore she'd sold. Daughter freezes, mother listens. 30 silent seconds stretch until the hinge whispers shut. By then Mara is down the stairs, past the photos whose faces have turned their backs, out into the pre-dawn chill that smells of wet magnolia and pending confession. The bus depot is a sodium-lit cave. She boards last, claims the seat, and watches the house shrink through tinted glass. Linda does not appear on the lawn, yet every shadow between street lamps feels armed with her denial. Mara replays the voicemail without sound. Lips part, breath catches, the shape of Dad's sentence etches itself against her teeth. 30 years of absence packed into 3 seconds. She wonders how much space a life really needs. Highway signs count down miles to the coast. She counts down lies told at birthdays, science fairs, graduations, each one a brick in the wall Linda built between her and the truth. The duffel rests on her knees like a child that never existed. Inside are 2 changes of clothes, Grandma's mirror, and the burner now stamped with Destiny's barcode. Dawn arrives as a bruise over wetlands. Her pulse sinks with the diesel throb. Every rotation of the tires pulls another root from the soil of her upbringing. She pictures the fisherman called Ben, beard silvered by salt, eyes scanning every horizon for the wife who threatened to hollow his name. Mara rehearses first contact, hand extended, voicemail cued, question shaped like a lifeline. Yet doubt circles. What if he denies? What if terror has gnarled him beyond recognition? What if loyalty to Linda's threats outweighs blood? The bus exhales at a bait shop crossroads. She alone stands on gravel smelling of kelp and diesel. No taxis, only gulls tracing arrows toward water. She walks, boots crunching oyster shells, heartbeat louder than surf. Ahead, cedar shacks lean like old conspirators. One porch light burns. Behind that door waits either a father or final confirmation that every story Linda fed her was carcinogenic. Mara fingers the phone, lifts the latch, and steps across the threshold where echoes go to confess. The room inhales. Time stalls between revelation and regret. The shack smells of salt-cured wood and unfinished grief. Mara's pupils widen, adjusting to a single bulb that swings like a slow metronome above a card table. Crumpled nautical charts, coffee gone syrupy, a pair of reading glasses cracked at the bridge. Each detail feels stolen from someone else's life, until her gaze lands on the man half-shadowed by the doorframe. His left cheek carries a scar that forks like lightning, the same scar she studied in her only childhood photo, the one Linda said was burned in a garage fire. Recognition punches the air out of her lungs faster than fear can catch up. Ben, if that name still fits, trembles, rope-veined hands lifted as though the past 30 years have been one long hold-up. When Mara whispers the nickname Mom refused to speak, his knees buckle, not from danger but from release, the way a prisoner finally hears the latch of freedom yet cannot step through. Outside, gulls screech over the sound of a car door. Linda's heels drum the pier, hurried, bargaining with gravity. She bursts in clutching a plastic grocery bag fat with 20s, eyes wild, voice already stitching new promises. But Mara has stepped between the only parents she has left, thumb hovering over the phone speaker, the unreadied world one press away. Salt wind sneaks through warped planks, rattling the charts like warnings. 3 heartbeats syncopate inside the tiny room. A daughter's rage, a mother's terror, a father's exhausted hope. No one breathes. Mara looks at the man who surrendered everything, then at the woman who took it, and wonders which love deserves survival tonight. The voicemail crackles alive, his 30-year-old plea echoing into the future, and the bulb overhead stops swinging, as if even light needs permission to move. What happens to a family when justice finally learns their real names?